So, hello and welcome to today's podcast. So, Chip, you brought a friend along today. So, do you want to introduce us?
Good morning, Becca. I would be happy to. This is my very good friend Marco. He is the CEO, King, Chief Cook and Bottle Washer of all things HLB, and we're closing in on Raymond's 1 year anniversary, and I've just been extraordinarily excited about all things HLB, and I thought, I can chat a little bit, but Marco is the master at explaining it all. So I really appreciate you coming on today, Marco.
Oh, it's
Thank you.
great to see you. Great to see you, Marco. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Becca. Thank you. Thank you, Chip. And I didn't realize was a year. I thought it was already 10 years that we've been working together. Incredible.
Yeah, it's somewhat like my conversations with my wife trying to remember before, and there just really isn't any.
So, I mean, Chip, you joined a year ago. So, why did you make that decision? Why did you do it?
So
Why
so
did you
this is
join?
actually a good segue into it all. There's a lot of things that led us to looking at different networks, and when we spent time talking to HLB, all the conversations were different. The spirit of the group was entrepreneurial. It wasn't so much a network of just connected people, but really a large extended family really working hard towards growing the practice. Now, when we spent time talking to Marco and the various people, there's always a little bit of how much salesmanship are you getting, right? Do you buy everything that they're giving you and all of that? And I can tell you, after a year, they undersold it. It has been just so extraordinarily different. Had we known what HLB was like a decade ago, it would be the 10-year anniversary rather than the 1 year.
Oh, so tell me why. What is it that's so different? What's really grabbed you, Chip?
So frankly, it starts probably at the top with Marco. He'll be disappointed that I'm heading to Oxford again this December, but he's a Cambridge guy, and you can tell that he has got a keen strategic mind to take a look at what needs to be done, looking forward down the road at the future, but then a very keen tactical mind and putting in steps to actually achieve the goals. And so it's a big difference of actually meeting those goals, and that combined with the entrepreneurial nature of the people, the responsiveness. Marco doesn't sleep. I don't think if you need help getting a hold of a member anywhere in the world, if he's not physically there or on the way there, he's available on phone. So just the responsiveness, the nature of trying to really lift the tide that raises all of the boats. A lot of other networks have got a variety of members, and it's just not so much about lifting everyone. And here it truly is that empowering everyone. As Marco talks about some of the goals, the mission accomplished from the last strategic plan, and then getting ready to roll out the next strategic plan, I think you'll hear a lot of those differences.
So, Marco, I mean, give us some basic facts about the network to start with, so we know a bit more about how you're structured and how many members you've got and that sort of thing.
For sure. So we are roughly in 160 countries with over 40,000 people. And just so you know, we're now counting again because every end of year we do this exercise. So probably we are going to be a lot more in terms of people. Countries, I think more or less is still 160. And our presence is different depending on the country. In some cases, we have, like, for example, in the US, we have an umbrella, a federation structure. In other countries, we have one exclusive member firm. But let's say that the governance itself is organized through an international board, which is our council. And below that, there are a number of subcommittees, which include the executive committee, which has, let's say, which is more hands-on, works more closely with me. The finance committee, the nomination committee, and then there is another more informal committee for strategy. And that committee was, worked more closely with me for the development of the strategy, both the strategy now that is coming to an end this year, and the new strategy that we are launching next year. And of course, then there is a lot more to it. We are organized in let's say a number of different central committees for the key service lines, and then we have on the top of that several industry and specialty and best practice groups on the top of regional groups, and all of these various communities create different networks within the network and maintain the level of engagement high. And one of the groups that we have, a commercial group, is the turnaround, restructuring, and insolvency HLB global group, which is led very nicely. Great job from Chip, actually.
Oh, yeah, well, he puts his time in, that's for sure. I know how hard he works. So, I mean, I'm interested in the strategy as well, because you've had a strategy, you've changed it, you've changed direction slightly. Tell us where you've come from and where you're going to, Marco.
Yes. So our current strategy was developed, let's say, the years before COVID, and was launched beginning of 2020. So some might argue that well, COVID could have been a big problem for the development, for the implementation of our strategy, because of course we wouldn't be able to meet, to discuss, to exchange best practices in the same way. On the other side, though, I think it gave us a boost to do things differently. And I don't know if fortunately or because we were in the right direction, but actually COVID really somehow helped us develop faster than we thought. So the process, first of all, for setting the strategy, and that is regardless of the type of strategy, in at least in HLB, and that's personally also what I believe is the right process. So it's really let's say important. So we involved a lot of people, different levels, so that is a collective effort. The process is at least as important as the strategy itself, if not more important. And on the top of that, well, you can have all the best ideas in the world, and then they can, just be put there on a nice document. But then ultimately, what makes a difference is the implementation. So I think we were very structured in the process, and there was a very very strong level of involvement of different parties. So there was the necessary buy-in. The document, let's say, the strategy itself was simple and easy to understand, but very well structured, and then with different levels for each of the various strategic pillars down below. And then on the top of that, the implementation as well was extremely clear, and the implementation framework doesn't change again. So we as a network do not have the same level of leverage that an individual company, an individual member firm could have, because of course people are not, we can say, we are not paid directly. They're not employed directly by us. So whichever way you look at this is the reality. So you can get things done in many different ways, I would say. But the three most important, let's say, areas for us to implement any strategic actions are, first of all, our communities. They can be different type of communities: regional, commercial, best practice, functional, and so on. Our events. And then three, our enablers, our tools, our learning. So these three things actually work together. So our actions our strategic actions are all across these three different areas, and that stays with the new strategy. So talking about the current strategy, so we achieved most of our objectives 1 year in advance, and for the end of this year, we project to be above our objectives for some of the areas or in line for other ones. And in short, so there were objectives in terms of growth. We wanted to be $4.5 billion globally. Now we will be probably over 5 billion. We wanted to have like at least $1.5 billion in advisory revenues, and we will be roughly that amount. And we wanted to reach a certain level of cross-border work, which I think was like 60% increase, which we will get to by the end of this year. And even more importantly, we wanted to help our member firms create the foundations to then be able to properly grow. And that entails being future-proof when it comes to marketing, technology, and people maturity, on the top of starting our journey collectively in terms of being a more sustainable organization. So I'm glad to say that we achieved all of these, and as a result of that, we became a top 10 network.
Yeah,
That's for the current strategy.
yeah, it's impressive achievement. So Chip, I mean, listening to everything that Marco said, and he made a really good point there about the involvement of members, because this is always an issue when people are doing work voluntarily rather than actually being paid to do it. And the member firms are volunteers, exactly as Marco said. So how do you think HLB's managed to implement their objectives from this strategy and get that involvement from the members? What's the secret been? Because I don't think there's a lot of actually paid workers that find that easy, let alone
Well,
volunteer organizations.
I'll tell you what the secret is. The secret is that every member recognizes the network cares and is vested in their success. So Marco touched on it just a little bit. You know, we look at every year, there's a survey, and every firm is sort of evaluated by their people, their tech, you know, the various things to figure out, you know, are they just getting started? Are they future proof? Are they in the middle? And then resources are allocated to help move people along to where they want to be. And so we have, for example, on the advisory side, Marco talked about, you know, some firms are very mature in their advisory services. Other firms are really saying, how do we get started? And so the network is able to provide resources to both groups. They're able to help those who maybe are at the master's level, if you will, of advisory services. They're also able to provide resources to really help someone get started in developing an advisory mindset and getting the technical aptitude, maybe finding the people, figuring out how to market, you know, all of those different sorts of things. Additionally, there's a lot of scale involved in the technological tools. Marco talks about enablers, and the intranet, the famous HLB intranet, is really a work of art. The other difference is there's some fantastic people involved. Some of my favorite people. My favorite name in all of HLB is Abu. He's such a leader in technology, but not the only one. You know, there's probably a half dozen world-class technological leaders across the network that really help everyone, because you're able to stand on their shoulders. They're giants, and they just give you that kind of a head start. So when you talk about, you know, the strategy, Marco does lay out the things on paper, but what makes the difference is they care, and they actually work to achieve, and they work to achieve by helping each individual member advance from whatever point they are across a wide spectrum of areas to that next level. And that's that rising of the tide that lifts everybody that we talk about.
So that's quite a different approach, isn't it? Because what you often see in any type of network organization is that there's one person that joins, and they become the representative, and they're the only one that has that interaction. But from what you're saying, it sounds like the whole firm is involved and benefits from that relationship. Is that correct?
We would probably have 30 people that are involved in different levels. Some of those are technical groups, right? State and local tax, transfer pricing, valuation. Some of them are more marketing. My role is principally the international facing relationship partner for the firm, in addition to heading up the turnaround insolvency group for the network. But yeah, that's a big difference. This is not a country club where there's a CEO that just goes to golf a couple times a year in some exotic location. This is an actual operating network designed, as I say, to just really meet the firms across the board of where they are, and in many cases help lead them to where they need to go. That's that vision that Marco has, operating and acting with a couple hundred CEOs, and that process of developing the strategy and hearing and seeing what's going on really does put him at the very precipice of the peak, looking forward and being able to give that good guidance.
So, Marco, how else do you support your members at the moment? So we've heard about from Chip about the sort of learning and the help for firms depending at the different levels they're at. What are the other really distinct sort of support services that you give to your members in the network?
So, as I mentioned earlier, the way we implement our actions are through our communities, our conferences, and our enablers. Now, they include a wide set of activities, right? And then ultimately, the objective of those activities are to facilitate the exchange of best practices between peers, mostly. But now with the new strategy, because I talked about the last strategy, the current strategy, and now we're launching the new strategy. So then, of course, there would be a further change of direction, but the implementation framework stays the same to facilitate the exchange of these best practices. But that will be not only from between peers, but also with the addition of very selected external strategic partners for the new strategic dimensions of the network, which we see a couple of new ones. Like this is primarily this is going to be an innovation strategy. Innovation as a standalone dimension, but also innovation within the other strategic dimensions. And we do need to recognize that as primarily an accounting and advisory network, we don't necessarily have internally all the capabilities to move to the next generation network, to be even more different than we have been so far. And as a result of that, we will be working with really important leaders in this space, in innovation, but also in the other strategic dimensions. So they will all help us design specific programs going forward. The tools will be changed. There will be new tools. The learning has a lot of importance. And we were just doing some investigation, and we want to move the needle from, let's say, learning within technical skills to more soft skills, because in the new era where generative AI and in general technology will play such an important role, then you need to have people that first have the necessary cognitive agility, and second, the right set of communication and soft skills, which is not always the case, or at least intuitively, it is not always the case in the accounting profession. We need to transform from being the number person to being a really trusted advisor. But to do so, you need to be equipped with the right set of skills. So that's a transformation journey that we will embark on, and then the wide set of tools and activities, without having to go necessarily into details, will help the member firms move forward.
That sounds excellent. And I know run quite a lot of events and conferences as well. There always seems to be a regular thing on every month that somebody's going to that I hear about. Obviously, you'll be sharing those skills at those events. I mean, Chip, if you've been to various HLB events, have you found them useful? And what have you got out of them?
For sure. So when you think about the events that are held by a network like HLB, there's a number of very good reasons to be there. You know, and this may be skewed towards me. It might be different for other people, but you know, for me, the networking, the relationships, the people, that's the first thing. You know, Marco mentioned, you know, surviving through COVID and thriving through COVID, and that's true. But you find you can maintain relationships that way. Building new relationships, boy, the new relationships really have to happen face to face. And so that's for me the first step. The second step, as Marco mentioned, is the technical advancement. So we did a webinar, a podcast with Pinky a few weeks back. She spoke at the recent Madrid conference. It's an example of the soft skills, some of the new technology. We've had firms join the network that are robotic learning / AI type firms. It's those sorts of things that are cutting edge, where Marco and the team are able to find really world-class folks that can talk about the soft skills, the attitudes, the up and coming, the new technological and technical type things, where you know you really get a taste sometimes for the first time of this cutting edge technology. And because the network is so large, you know, we're able to scale and bring that together for everyone. Whereas if each individual firm was trying to get these people to come in one at a time, one, it would take forever, but two, that some of the smaller firms would just never get it. So you get those sorts of advantages. But the third thing, honestly, there is a power in business development towards being together. I can't tell you if I can't think of probably a conference that I've gone to where I haven't interacted with someone who said, you know, I've been meaning to call you about this project or this client need or this client need. And for whatever reason, at times it just never rises enough on the priority list to make the call until you're actually in the same room together. And then you're in the same room, and you know, our conference fees are paid for multiple times over by the business that's referred simply by proximity.
Yeah, you see, that's great to hear that you actually win work, because I think a lot of firms would say, you know, that for them, if they're thinking about joining a network, that for them is the key thing. So if I was a firm that hadn't ever joined a network and couldn't see why I perhaps should be in a global network, Marco, what would you say to me? What's the value for me as I've never done it before? Why should I join a global network?
So the answer is really depends, because it depends on the culture of the firm. It depends on how the firm is progressive or not, where they are putting their focus, where their geography is, and their expectations. So there could be many different benefits, and it depends again on these factors. I would say that one of the obvious benefits that a firm might think when joining a network is, okay, I'm going to join a network so that I can get a lot of cross-border referrals, right? So that's one thing, and and that's more the case for maybe member firms in more developed markets. It's more about servicing their own clients internationally through the power of the network. That is more important. But I would say that the network has evolved a lot from this concept. So yes, while this is important, another very important point is working together in let's say in each marketplace. Like for example, I'm a member firm in a country and I don't necessarily have some capabilities, so I can look for these capabilities within the network so that I'm stronger in my own marketplace and work together in team with another member firm, even from another country, get those skills, especially for, you know, advisory projects or for specialty areas. But even like, for example, I don't know, audit of telecommunication companies, it is different than auditing an oil company. So if I don't have that capability, then I might not have the right chances to win this client or to retain this client. So I need the capabilities, I need to leverage of the capabilities of other member firms. In addition to that, yeah, I mentioned the learning from best practices, and that is very wide, and it depends on many different situations. But for example, I want to grow my advisory practice, right? So that we have really the right set of tools and people that are leading the member firms and the network in general in the next generation for advisory services. Or I want to be more technological as a firm, or how do I invest in people? How do I invest in my own sustainability and so forth? The other thing is that there is a lot of attention again into technology and various tools that are provided to member firms. So I can't really, list them because there are so many. We have a whole collaboration hub that includes a very wide set of wide set of tools there to help member firms and their own clients. But I think that is a big difference that we see between us and other networks, in as much as the HLB Skills Hub as well, which is a very advanced AI-driven platform where member firms can actually assess their level of capabilities in a very analytical fashion in whichever area of their businesses, their people, and also be recommended types of actions that they can take in terms of courses, internal or international mobility. It's all really analytically driven. And of course, there are thousands of courses available, and they're constantly updated. In addition to other platforms for learning, like the Cambridge University program for executive leaders within the network, or the HLB Engage for future leaders. And those are just a few, but all the affinity program, which is the ecosystem that we have of external technology partners that provide external tools to our member firms at advantageous conditions. So it's really a combination of different things, and of course the technical part is like for audit and taxes. That's a given. You need to have it. We are a network, part of the forum of firms. We have our own training programs, the audit manual, the methodology, the training, but that, in my view, that's a given.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Thank you. And Chip, can I ask you about business? Because if you're working currently as an accountant, can you afford not to be looking at the global picture?
I don't really think you can. So just to really quickly summarize some of the things Marco was talking about. Firstly, there's just an economic advantage being part of a network, right? You will get some referrals for sure. You will be able to buy into technology at a advantaged commercial rate because we buy across a $5 billion network as opposed to a one shop network. So there's just some simple commercial advantages there. Those are what I'd call offensive advantages, right? They're things where you're getting advantages. There's a defensive advantage too. As the world continues to get smaller and more connected, if you don't have trusted resources where you can address your clients' needs, you're going to get nibbled away. You're going to have maybe not all the clients at once, so you don't see 20% of your business leaving at once, but every year you're going to have a dozen or 15 calls from clients who need help in Brazil or London or Uruguay or Korea or whatever. And not having, firstly, a responsive partner, not knowing whether who you call is quality, not knowing whether they really can technically meet the needs of your client, is going to just cause those clients of yours to find the answers somewhere else. And it's just going to be a nibbling effect. And the problem is, if it's 12 or 15 or 20 clients a year, 5 years in, now you get 100 clients. And now you've got a reputation as not being someone who can address really the next generation of client service. So that's the defensive reason. I talked early on about how responsive Marco is, and that's really important, because when a client calls, we've got to respond to them. And when we connect them with someone across the world, maybe in a different language with different time zones and everything else, clients get frustrated very quickly with a lack of responsiveness. And you differentiate yourself right out of the gate, either because the network is responsive or isn't. Before you even get to the point of developing whether you're trustworthy or pricing is good or any of those sorts of things, you get a reputation as, you're going to responsibly address my needs or not. And if it's the or not, then again, it's a problem, and your client's going to start looking other places. So those are some of the things, Becca, that I think about. And again, this tone at the top that Marco sets, his team, we've got Coco, we've got Brandon, we've got a variety of other leaders that Marco gets all the credit because he's the attractive face of the network. But there's plenty of people who are every bit as influential, powerful, and make the engine move.
Excellent.
Rebecca, I wanted to add another component, which is very important component of our network, is our brand. So we invest heavily in our brand, and many member firms in various countries actually have the same network identity as the network identity. So like they are branding HLB, and there is a wide set of let's say brand assets available for them, which are really I would say at the top of the industry. Having a strong brand is very important in your own marketplace. And on the top of that, if you combine that with the fact that HLB is a top 10 network, it makes a substantial difference from other organizations.
So, I mean, the brand's all well and good. I mean, marketing, brand is a really important, massive asset for anybody. But how do you ensure the quality of the people that join the network? How do you go about doing that?
So we, as a network, are a member of the Forum of Firms. And all the networks that are members of the Forum of Firms need to align to certain standards. So each of the various networks have a quality assurance program, which is probably very similar. And so we have to review our member firms on a regular basis. That applies for audit, but also we took another step, and we do have reviews for member firms that focus exclusively on tax or advisory services. So that's just in terms of quality procedures, right? And then, of course, we have recommendations and so on, and then actions that need to be taken. And if a firm doesn't comply with our quality standards, that cannot be a member of HLB. As simple as that. But on the top of that, it's not just quality in terms of compliance, but it's also quality, as you mentioned, quality of people and so on. So we strive to have the right people in the network relative to the specific situation of each country. And those people, those professional services firms, should be aligned with our values. We have a set of values, and also with the direction of our strategy. So we wouldn't have a firm that doesn't want to embark on a technological development, on digital development. We wouldn't have a firm that doesn't believe in people and so forth. So that is those strategic maturity assessments that we have every year really help us understand if we have been able to move the needle or not, if we can do something different. but also if there are situations where, no matter what kind of resources you're putting there for them, if a firm is not really receptive of them, then there is nothing to do. Fortunately, we don't have those cases. And well, typically you would have a case like that when the quality of the firm in terms of audit, tax, and advisory is not good. So the two things are, combined together, I would say.
So we've talked about the sort of quality of the work and the people and the strength of your brand, and obviously your brand has really broken through, and particularly I've noticed it in the last year. So more people are aware of it and have heard of it and are aware of the network, and I think it's really gained some momentum. Do you feel that the business community is also beginning to notice HLB more and understanding what the brand means in the same way that it does, say, BDO or RSM?
So that's a great question, and I think we have done a tremendous amount of work over the last few years with activities to strengthen our brand in the marketplace. Chip mentioned the survey of business leaders, for example. That is really a top piece that has been picked up by top magazines globally, but also the cybersecurity report or our HLB Communities Day. So we have a lot of activities that have been able to help us raise the level of our brand tremendously over the last few years. Now, we analyze constantly, monitor the situation and the benchmarks. We benchmark against the other top 10 network and see where we are. We see the momentum. We see spaces for growth, opportunities, weaknesses, and of course there are brands that have been doing this for maybe longer time. That you mentioned RSM, BDO, or maybe Grant Thornton. And I think that we are very different as a network compared to maybe 10 years ago or 7 years ago, but there is still quite a bit to do, and we are aware of this. But brand is definitely an area where we are investing a lot, and in the right way. And if you just wanted to consider relative growth in the importance of our brand compared to other top networks, you will see that we probably have been enjoying better momentum compared to many other ones.
And probably not having such a historic background helps with that, because it makes you more agile, doesn't it, as well?
That is true.
It makes you able to move faster. So just to summarize then, just to round this up, if someone, a firm who is looking to join a network, said to you, why should I join HLB? Just one sentence, why should I come to you?
Well, if you want to embark in a lifelong change for your firm, to be the firm of the future, if you want to be an innovative practice, well, that's the right place to be.
Excellent. I think I shall sign up. If I was an accountant, I think I would. Chip, what about you?
Honestly, I'd have them listen to this podcast, and if they aren't receiving the kind of support and experience that we're describing, they should call Marco. Bottom line, I think about the opportunity cost of Raymond being elsewhere over the last decade, and it's sizable. Like I say, wish we had that time back. And my advice for firms who are out there who either aren't part of a network or who aren't seeing that kind of value and influence from the network is, don't let more time go by. Yeah, there's a real cost to missing out. So that's what I'd tell them. I've spoken with a number of firms. The accountancy world is changing as we try to figure out what this next bit's going to hold for us. We see the technological pressures, the economic pressures, the different troubles in the world, and having trusted friends that are together managing these things, that are together responding and reacting, you can't put a price on it. And so, hopefully we've done a good job today sort of expressing it. It is kind of the year anniversary for Raymond being in, and just really appreciate everything that Marco and the team have done. It's been a fantastic ride, and can't wait to see where it goes.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, guys. It's been super to see you today, and have a great rest of the day. So bye, Marco. Bye, Chip.
Thank you, everybody.